So we're coming to the end of our letter here. Let's see how much slack I have. A lot. All right. And Paul is once again speaking to the Corinthian community, this community that's had trouble with divisions and with drama, that occasionally has floundered in the faith and has listened to some of the wrong voices. He's telling them once again, you have a chance to start fresh, to embrace the ministry of Jesus Christ and leave behind your differences and leave behind all of your drama. And so this week's text might sound on the surface a little bit contradictory to what we talked about last week. So remember what we talked about last week? Weakness and strength. Does that give you a clue? Yeah, we were talking about strength. And how strength in God has to do with being in touch with our weaknesses and being open to grace. And being honest about the fact that we're not perfect. And that God really doesn't expect us to be that either. And so in this reading, it might sound a little bit like Paul's kind of saying something that doesn't agree with that. Because he's telling you to test out your faith and make sure it's solid. Kind of sounds like he's asking us to be perfectly faithful people, doesn't it? A little bit. But I guess that all depends on what it means to be solid in your faith. And so he gives us a clue about what that's all about when he says that we should see if Jesus Christ is in us. What do you think that means? What does it mean to have Jesus Christ in you? How do you know if someone has Jesus Christ in them? Can you tell? Is it based on being baptized or going to communion, coming to church, doing good deeds? What do you think? Is there evidence that you can point to in somebody's life and say, yes, Jesus Christ is in that person? If you love even one person, you have Jesus in your life. I like it. Anybody else think they have some evidence? Karen?
In you for teaching us.
Well, that humbles me. Well, thank you. Teaching, yes, absolutely. But that teaching in some ways is an act of love, if you think about it. You care enough about that person to bother, right? Absolutely. What else might be evidence that Jesus Christ is in us? Forgiveness. Say more.
Rather than holding a grudge or an eye for an eye. You're willing to forgive.
Rather than holding a grudge or an eye for an eye, you're willing to forgive. Turn the other cheek. Absolutely. I think that's a really key thing. Forgiveness and love. They go hand in hand. So, forgiveness and love. And being in Jesus Christ. So let's think about Jesus Christ for a second. You know, often when we think of Jesus Christ, we think of kind of this perfect, pure, sinless guy, which is only reinforced by how we see him portrayed in the media. How does Jesus usually appear if you see him in a movie? How's he look? Kind of hippie-like, shoulder-length hair, he's got a nice groomed beard. White, yes, he's usually Caucasian.
No, I mean he's dressed in white.
Dressed in white, that too. Yeah. All I heard was white, I'm sorry. My bad. Both of those things, shall we say. He's usually portrayed as being white, which he's always very handsome, put together, yeah.
Clear blue eyes.
Clear blue eyes. How about his temperament? What about his eyes?
When you look at his eyes in any movie, they always find someone to portray them with mesmerizing eyes. Yes.
Mesmerizing eyes. They're kind of like dreamy eyes, aren't they? Full of wisdom and truth.
Like he's looking right through you.
Like he's looking right through you. Very interesting. So if this is the Jesus Christ who in us, maybe we feel the pressure to be kind of perfect and shiny and pure and in white. But Jesus Christ in the Bible really isn't like that. He's not perfect and shiny and pure, if you think about it. he was essentially a nobody. He was kind of like the riffraff. He was from Galilee, this backwater town, and there was a reason that people were saying, this is the carpenter's son. What's he doing? Boldly pronouncing about God's kingdom. What's he doing saying that he can teach about God's teachings? And if you think about Jesus' ministry, he's not always calm with that faraway gaze in his eyes. He loses his temper in the temple. He cries when his best friend, his good friend Lazarus, dies. He has feelings. He's not always the mellow fellow that we see in movies. And so if this Jesus Christ is in us, I think that it has to do with Jesus being a rebel in some ways. But a rebel with a cause, not without a cause. And his cause, as I see it, is the truth. He really wants to get down to what God is doing in the world and who God really is. And he shows this by being with the people that God cares about. And they aren't the people that folks during Jesus' time thought God cared about. Prostitutes, tax collectors, people who were sick, people who were possessed by demons, people who were outsiders, even the enemy, the Samaritans, they weren't friendly with the Jewish folk. These are the people that Jesus reaches out to. And as he reaches out to them, he reveals the truth that these are the people that God really cares about. Not just the people who are shiny and pure and powerful. And Jesus also reveals that the power of God is not necessarily always perfectly reflected in those in power in the religious parts, in institutions, and in the political institutions of his day. He really points out the hypocrisy and the inconsistency of those people who were leading during his time, which of course doesn't make him very popular. So if this is who Jesus is, then maybe Jesus Christ being in us has to do with embracing that truth about who God cares about. And it's not the shiny, perfect, pure people. It's the people who have made mistakes. The people who have been left behind. The people who have been left out. And so we're going to watch another video about embracing the truth. And this again is Pastor Nadia Bolz-Weber. She's a Lutheran pastor in the church. If you haven't heard me give the little spiel before, she suffered from addiction when she was in her 20s, and then when she became clean, she felt the call to become a pastor. And so in her call, she has really embraced people who have traditionally not felt welcome in the church. And in her teaching, she's known for being very down-to-earth and frank about Jesus' teachings. And so today, we will hear from her. There will be no curse words, so no worries on that front. And the video is called Telling the Truth About Ourselves. So let's listen to her video. It's about 2 minutes long, and then we'll continue with the sermon.
As someone who stumbles through faith and life in general, and who's never managed to feel spiritual for any extended period of time, who's snarky and selfish and sometimes downright petty, the truth is, I only really feel connected to other people who are also like that. I mean, it feels good to be inspired by other people, to admire their accomplishments and be dazzled by their virtues, but what I really want is to not feel so alone. And while I might feel inspired by someone who is good, I only feel less alone when someone shares their failures with me, the things they struggle with, the parts of themselves that are more jagged than smooth. And I guess I've always suspected that so much of religion and spirituality, so much of what is offered is a way to sand down the edges of ourselves. Like it's all a program for making ourselves into something less janky and more pure, as if with enough yoga or Bible study or organic foods, we can spiritually improve ourselves into purity of heart and mind. And if you find that it doesn't work for you, if you find that all the New Age meditation doesn't do the trick and you still experience road rage or maybe just a tiny bit of hatred toward your boss, and you still binge watch too much Netflix and can't seem to manifest everything in your life that you should, just know that you are totally not alone. You don't have to fake anything. It just so happens that the jagged edges of our humanity are what actually connect us to one another. Those wounds and failures and misconceptions and mistakes, those are the things that actually create enough texture on us that God and our fellow human beings have something to grab onto.
So was there anything that particularly stuck out to you in that video? Everything. Who says that, Anne? Say more, Anne. Which part of everything?
All of it.
All of it. Could you sum it up?
She did.
Ed!
I don't do yoga, I'm not a vegetarian, but.
He doesn't do yoga, he's not a vegetarian. I'm shocked, Ed. Shocked.
Yeah, but, she really brought it down to earth, as you said, that we're not perfect.
We're not. Mm-mm. And it's okay. And it's okay. Absolutely. This is the truth, I think, that Paul is really praying for, to win out in us and in the Corinthians. Because if we think about the Corinthians, they were kind of folks who wanted to appear shiny and perfect and pure. And that was really dividing them. Because certain folks were like, I'm more shiny and perfect pure than you are, April. So really, you can't do God's work. And it didn't really help their community at all. And so Paul is really praying that they can get a grip and put their head on straight. Not that they can get their crap together, but that they can realize that, you're not perfect. Nobody is. And so you really can't claim anything over anybody else. And you might as well just work side by side, realizing that we're all on the same ground. This is really what enables us to be community and to reach out. I mean, if you think about it, it's hard to do the work of forgiveness and love. There you go, God agrees. It's hard to do the work of forgiveness and love if you don't forgive and love yourself, isn't it? It's hard to reach out to others and be accepting if you can't accept yourself. And again, that's not about, becoming perfect or your ideal self. It's about, accepting yourself as you are. And it's hard to lift up those who have been beaten down if you're so busy beating yourself down all the time. So, when we embrace this truth about ourselves, it really enables us to do God's work, to be partners with one another and look past the grievances and the conflicts and the breakups, and to look past our own mistakes and flaws and to do the work of God together. And this, I think, as we were talking about in the beginning, is the evidence that Jesus Christ is in us. When we can really just embrace the fact that we're never going to be perfect, neither is our neighbor. In fact, they're probably going to be really annoying sometimes. And yet, this is who we have to work with. This is who God has given us. Ourselves and our not-so-perfect, annoying neighbor. And if we can be honest with one another, then we can really grow closer to one another, and we can be stronger and be more of a representative of Christ in the world. Because we're not so caught up in trying to look perfect or pure. We're not so caught up in the mellow Jesus with the perfect faraway gaze and the wisdom of centuries. What we're caught up in is the work of Jesus, which is reaching out to those who need it and providing them with the love and forgiveness that we ourselves have first received. And this is the evidence that Jesus Christ is in us. And any miracles that we accomplish, is not because of our perfection, but because of God working through us. Amen.